Hello, Porters. Mr. Kane here. And I seem to be at home, right? So recently, my friend and colleague, Mr. Crone of the Lockport East Campus Media Center, was talking to me about a project he was interested in. He was sharing with me that he was hoping that he could get some teachers to make some videos about interesting hobbies that they have, and that he would have some books on hand in the library for any student who's interested in checking out more information. Checking out more information. That's like a library pun. Well, at any rate, I decided that I would go ahead and help him out here. And I've made a quick presentation called More Than a Chemistry Teacher, or Beekeeping is a Sweet Hobby. Um, my family and I have been keeping bees for the past about 11 years. It's not something that I've always done, and it's not always something that I've been comfortable with, but it's something that since it's the beginning of, since it's late February, early March, it's something I'm starting to look forward to because this is the time of year when we order bees and we get the bees, the new bees that we're going to be getting for our spring and summer. So I'm going to go ahead and get into this. What really got us interested in beekeeping as a hobby, as a family, is my wife and I, shortly after we got married, realized that both of us thought that this was an interesting hobby. So she grew up on 5 acres, and her parents still live in that same location. They have a lot of flowers and a lot of plants, and they were having some trouble with getting squash to grow, pumpkins specifically. We thought that maybe the issue was that there weren't a lot of local pollinators anymore. We decided that we were going to start keeping bees. There's been a lot of different things that have attracted us to this. For me, I'm learning new things. I get to learn about the history of beekeeping, which goes back a long ways. Although the modern method of using boxes stems back to about the 1860s. Um, there's word etymology like none of your beeswax, lots of sweet puns. Not to mention biology was one of my loves when I was young. I loved studying biology, and it's brought me back around to that. This time of year, I start when the snow is melting. The outside smells a certain way, and when you open up a beehive, you can taste the honey without even actually ever tasting anything. And the sounds of it, it's amazing. I was reviewing some video of the bees buzzing as I was opening up boxes. You'll get to see that in a few minutes. Other things that really interested me, I've done a number of bee education presentations, and so has my wife. We really enjoy getting to know people and getting to help out different communities understand a little bit more about the stinging insects and that there is a difference between bees and wasps. We've spent the past 10 years making and selling honey, wax, and other wax-related items. My wife's really got a great lip balm, and on the way we've entered in some Will County Fair and won a few awards. And quite frankly, I am no longer afraid of getting stung. Nowhere near as afraid as I used to be. So let me get into this. How do you get bees? This is actually a picture of our first package of bees. I thought ahead and I started taking pictures. As soon as we got it, you can see that there is a U.S. Postal Service priority mail sticker right on top of this particular package. That's because bees come in the mail. All right, livestock can get shipped in the mail, and it was kind of interesting because it came through the Romeoville Sorting Center, and they called me up because they actually put your phone number on livestock. And they let us know that it was 6 o'clock in the morning. You can come pick up your bees right now here, or we can send them on to the Lockport Sorting Center. And we're not really sure how long it's going to take for the bees to get to you then. Um, so they we obviously went out and picked them up because it's a lot easier to drive to Romeoville than to wait, especially when you're expecting 5 pounds of flying insects to be showing up. You can see that they're shipped in a wooden cart, a wooden crate that has screening on the sides. So the bees probably aren't going to sting anybody through that. There are some handles, wooden handles on the top. And you can see me opening up here. There's a can that you can't see in this picture because there's a piece of wood over it to hold it in place. That's sugar water. That's so the bees have water and food as they're traveling from their original location to their new home. Uh, They put a queen inside of what's called a little queen cage. So it's a little piece of wood, and you can see the queen right inside there, and some attendants on the outside. We took a picture of this nice light brown colored attendant here. The attendants make sure that the queen gets her water and her nectar. And you can see the basic process is you just kind of dump the bees in. You can see this is the first year we're doing this. This might be actually the second year we're doing this, but there's not much fear of getting stung. It's usually this particular year it was cold, and bees don't fly very well. Their muscles literally do not work below about 60 degrees. I forgot the exact temperature, but their muscles stop working when they get too cold, so they literally cannot do much of anything. So you just kind of dump them out, and you put the queen cage, you hang that over the side here. So part of the process is that these bees aren't necessarily all from the same place in the same hive. There are beekeepers that raise queens and raise bees, and what they'll do is they'll just kind of put together a whole bunch of bees from a whole bunch of different hives, along with this new queen. They'll ship them out to you, and it takes a couple of days for these bees to accept their new queen. You kind of leave the queen inside of her queen cage, and you put it inside of your box because you're not sure how long it took for these bees to get to you. And you let them let her out. You can see down below, there's a whole bunch of little bees down there, about 5 pounds worth of bees. You can see here, this was my very first hive, my very first year. I was really proud of it. It looked really nice. On the front, we have what's called a feeder, and you just put sugar water in that upside down mason jar. It's got a few little pinprick holes in the lid. I don't do that so much anymore because most of the time when we get bees, there's so much nectar around, it's not even funny. One of the things that I learned is that trees have nectar. And early in the spring, usually in March, mid-March, when we get the bees, that's when tree buds usually are going in. You get a lot of nectar from that. You can see this is what's called a 10-frame box. That's because there's 10 individual frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You can see that there's a little bit of wax in some places where the bees have built up a little bit of wax. So these frames aren't extremely old because after a while they start building wax absolutely everywhere.
It's a queen in her queen cage. You can see that she's alive and well in there, a little anxious to get out.
And they've got, you still going?
Yeah.
So they've got a cork there. We're going to put some queen candy in there. Yeah, okay, go ahead. Okay. I'm holding it.
Push it in there a little bit.
Push it in there just a little. And then what we'll do is
There was a hole in there.
okay, make sure that there's a hole so that the bees can eat their way through that. And it's just basically fondant, sugar and water. We're going to spread a couple of frames on the inside of the hive here. There we go. Just gonna have to kind of wedge it in there. You can come back later, a couple of days, and put the hive back in order. Here's the fun part. This box here contains 3 pounds of bees. And they're all clustered everywhere. They want to get into their new home ASAP. I'm going to put our nice nail over there. This goes with us later. Oh yeah, there's a nice bit of comb in there. And basically you just dump them on in. And as you can see, they fall in mighty nice. And those ladies have been in that box for too long because they started making nice white wax. even a little bit of nectar on it from the sugar water. All right, if you want to look in there, they immediately start finding their way to where they want to be, in between frames. And we're just gonna put the excess frames right on in, make sure not to crunch any. No squishing bees. We'll push all of our frames together in the center of the box and cover them up. Just like so. Apply a nice rock so that so the wind doesn't blow away the cover.
So after we're all done packaging up our bees into the hives, we usually leave the boxes out front because there's a few hangers on the inside that never actually fall out. You let the bees sit there for a couple of days, and you go back and you get the queen cage out after 2 or 3 days, and they'll have released the bees. Now you might have seen in the video I had a stinger in my thumb, and I usually don't pull them out right away because when a bee stings you, they've got a little hooked barb on the end of their stinger, and so they actually rip out part of their abdomen along with it. So they're going to die when they sting you. They don't really want to sting you unless they have to. So usually bees only sting you if you push on them. Honeybees only sting you if you push on them. It's yellow jackets that give bees a bad rap because we say that any yellow and black stinging insect is a bee. And they're usually the ones that wind up stinging you multiple times at a picnic. Yellow jackets, by the way, don't have a hooked barb on their stinger. So when they sting you, they get to sting you again and again and again, and they don't die because of that. But what I was going to point out here also is that when the honeybee loses part of her abdomen there, she leaves behind the venom sac, and that venom sac starts pumping the bee venom into your into your skin there, underneath your skin. And the venom is really good at causing cells to lyse, to break open, which is why you get swelling afterwards. What's really interesting is that over the past decade, scientists have been looking at bee venom because that bee venom is really good at causing cells to lyse. I know that 10 years ago they were talking about if you could get this bee venom delivered to cancer cells, that you could get it to take out the cancer cells, so you wouldn't have any real need for chemotherapy as a thought process. And in the past decade, that has happened. I was just reading an article summary recently that was talking about using bee venom against very specific kinds of tumors. The other thing that happens is bee poop definitely happens, and I got to show you this quick little video here. This is my wife's hand and glove.
Oh yeah, I can see her pooping for sure.
All that poop came out of one bee.
That one bee, and she still looks like she's working it.
So the basic idea is that bees are very clean animals. They don't like to poop in their own hives or in their own cages. So they actually won't. So those bees had been traveling. They were in a box. We were putting them into a new hive, and these particular ones had clung on to my wife for a little while, and they started pooping. Our part of the sights and the smells of spring for me is when I go to my in-laws' house. And we have brand new bees. There will be bees everywhere flying around, taking their cleansing flights, and there'll be bee poop all over the cars. It's bright yellow and orange and whatever colors of pollen that they had been eating recently. Here's a picture of my lovely wife here. You can see that this is early on. We're still wearing the gloves, which make us more clumsy and actually make us get stung a little bit more often. She's holding up a large frame of mostly honey. You can see that the bees like to start from the top and work their way down. There's another great big frame of all honey. And then here's a frame that has brood in it. You can notice that it's a different color. And the brood is capped off here. So that's where the baby bees are, that the queen will lay eggs inside of the uncapped brood chambers, uncapped honeycomb. and they'll cover that over after they've fed the larva enough nectar, water, and honey. That way, that bee will turn into a adult bee, which takes care of the rest of the hive. It's interesting. Different age bees have different jobs. I'm not going to get into that here, but they do have different jobs. You can actually see inside of the honeycomb cells. Here is a larva that's getting ready to be capped off because it's big, white, grub-like. But in some of these other cells, they either look empty or they have they have an egg in them. This is a picture, obviously, of a 2014 penny. It's not my picture, it's one I found on the internet, but it was really awesome because what you can see here is you can see the bee egg. That is actually an egg laid by a queen bee, and it's not much bigger than the one that's that's on that's on the U.S. penny. That shows you how small it is. If you're looking for them, you can actually see them inside. There are little larvae that have hatched out. They're a couple days old inside these cells over here. And inside some of these cells, I know that there's some. I know that there's some eggs. I know this one, for instance, has an egg in it right there next to that bee's leg. You can see some bigger larvae that have grown a bit bigger. These are sights and smells of the spring again for me. And you can see that there's a little liquidy looking stuff. This is nectar that the honeybees are evaporating the water off of to turn into honey. And then you can also see different colors of pollen. You can see some green pollen over here, some yellow, some orange, and some really dark colored pollen. So different kinds of flowers in different kinds of trees put off different kinds of pollen. And the nectar actually tastes different too. So you can see a big comb of capped off honey on the top. This is how we know it's done, is that the bees will cap it off. Just like we would put things into jars and put a cap on them, they put a wax cap on it. And you can see more glistening nectar down below. I almost want to call this honey, but it's not honey until they cap it. They know when to cap it. More bees waggling around. You can see this one has her back leg has pollen stored they've got little pockets in their legs that they can store pollen and things like that, pollen and water in. More glistening nectar and more honeybees. You can practically smell it from here. And then finally, one of the things that I wanted to show you guys is that we do bee education. You can see here my wife and my oldest son, Liam. This is at Millen Grove Elementary School. They do a talk there every year, which is kind of fun in the library. So I hope that this might have piqued some of your interest in beekeeping. If you're interested in beekeeping, I've got two books that I really highly recommend. The first one listed on the left over there is The First Lessons in Beekeeping. That is the book that I used throughout my first entire 5 years of beekeeping. It was my go-to reference for what I should be doing and when I should be doing it and what I was looking for. The Beekeeper's Bible is another great book. It's full of great information and a lot of reference material. It's also full of some recipes, things that you can cook with your honey, and also things you can do with beeswax and stuff like that. If you're really interested in this, I would definitely request catalogs from companies like Man Lake Beekeeping and Zedant Beekeeping Supplies. They're both Midwestern beekeeping companies, and they've got a lot of information in their catalogs. And also, there's an organization that I helped to start, like I said, a little over 10 years ago, the Will County Beekeepers Association, which meets at the Will County Farm Bureau. It's really a great organization. I haven't been to it in a while, but I can highly recommend. Everyone there is wonderful and has great advice. My favorite joke is that if you ask 6 beekeepers some advice, you'll get about 12 different opinions. And it's definitely true because everyone's got their own bent on how to do something. And then they've got a secondary thing that they also used to do or they want to try out. I hope you can see why I got stung by this great, sweet hobby. And if you ever have any questions or want to talk about bees, please feel free to stop down by room 28. I'd be willing to have a nice conversation with you.